Okay, so in this video, I'm going to be showing you guys. So last video we went over how to create trend lines in the long term. Now, just with resistance and support lines, you want to also create them in the short term. So we're going to be zooming in and seeing what we can make or create in the short term. So now we're in the weekly chart, but let's just zoom in. Let's go ahead and go to the daily. Let's see if we can find anything here. Gotta spot them out. Okay, see one over here. Perfect. All right. Do you see that? If you can zoom in, okay. So it starts from here. It bounces off the long-term trend line. Remember, this is the long term right below here. This is the long term, and then it bounces up here, and then shoots back down. So actually, it bounces up and hits this resistance line and shoots back down. Then bounces off this trend line, shoots back up, kind of breaks through this resistance line, hits this next resistance line, and then bounces down, and then hits the same trend line. Do you see? Now it's becoming a pretty strong trend line because it's hit it twice, but we want it to hit it 3 times. If it's going to really be a strong, super strong trend line. So it goes up again, and then bounces back down. Perfect. Okay. Up again, bounces back down, up again, and finally gets the courage to break right through it. Now, as you can see, it actually breaks right through it and then goes ahead and bounces on the long-term trend line. So this would have been a great sell because you know that, okay, it's broken through the short-term trend line. It's probably going to start heading towards the long-term trend line, okay? And even at that, it broke through this blue line right here, which is the support line, and also it broke through this support line as well. So, I mean, this would have been a perfect sell. Let's see if we can create another one. Let's try and go into the 4-hour chart and go to more recently. Okay, so here's one I created. I'll delete these so this makes sense to you. Okay, so this is the long-term. This is the long-term trend line right here. If you zoom out to the weekly, you just want to make sure you understand that. This is the long term. Okay. Now I zoom into the 4-hour. Now, as you can see, it broke through the long term a little bit. So I would have been prepared for a sell, but if it's breaking through a long term, you want it to like really, really, really break it. This kind of just barely, shyly broke it. So it's not convincing me yet that I should sell it. Okay, but however, you can see a little bit of a trend line. I'm going to create one on top of here. Do you see that? Look at how many times it bounced off that. It bounced off the weekly, went to the short term, bounced back down, broke through the weekly, but went back up to the short term, bounced down, broke through the weekly again, went back up to the short term, bounced down, and it went back up to the short term, and finally broke right through it, okay? And why this would have been a great buy is because you know that this long weekly trend line is kind of giving it some support. It's kind of bouncing back off of it and going back upwards. So you know that it's around this weekly trend line. It's probably going to start heading back up again because this is the support trend line, and it broke right through this short-term resistance trend line, right, and went all the way up. It would have been a great buy. Okay, so that's just how you identify like short-term trend lines. Let's see if we can find some more, maybe in some other pairs. Try USD CAD. Let's see if we can find it here. Okay, so I actually made one right here as well. Can you see this? Look at this right here. This is the 4-hour, by the way. And look at that. Look at this trend line right here. It bounces off of here, shoots back up, goes back down, and bounces back up. Okay. Actually, I created this one on top right here. And it actually hits it 3 times, so it's pretty strong as well. So if it broke over here, I would have bought. But let's start from the beginning. So it goes like this, kind of like reaches here, shoots down, bounces up, shoots down, bounces up again. That's the second time. Shoots up. Doesn't really touch it, but then doesn't really touch it until it gets over here. Then bounces back up, shoots down again, bounces. That's touched it 4 times now. This is a very strong trend line. And then it bounces back up and shoots all the way and breaks right through it. Okay, so this would have been a great sell opportunity as well, right here. And it's up to you when you want to pull out of the sell. Really, whenever I pull out of the sell or the short, is when I want to, or is when I see it approaching certain particular strong support lines like this. Do you see that? Like, this is a pretty strong support line. It hits it right here. It kind of struggles right here as well, and it hits it a couple times here. It hits it here definitely, and there's a struggle right here as well. So this is a good point to. I would have sold it around here definitely, or at least when I started seeing it going in the upward direction again, I would have gotten out the trade. And yeah, another thing I want to point out is look how it went down. It broke through this red line. It went all the way down and bounced off of this weekly resistance and started heading back up again. So I've actually been selling this currency. I've made a couple $100. I've been selling this currency in the past couple days because I saw it bounce off the weekly resistance, or the weekly support, sorry, right here, and shot back up. So that's pretty good. Let's see if we can find some more short-term trend lines. Okay, here's another one I created. This is a 4-hour, by the way. And I made money off the sell. I actually made a lot of money off the sell. This is one of the NZDs. So, the New Zealand dollar released their interest rates a couple days ago. And it actually cut their rate significantly, which is really bad for the currency. And so it shot down. But even beside that, without even looking at that, you would have known that it was going to shoot down because look at this trend line right here. I created this, and you can see that it touches it several times, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Like what is that? Like this is 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Touches it 5 times and finally breaks right through it. Breaks through these red, support lines as well, and starts shooting back down all the way for the weekly support. So this would have been a great opportunity for sell. This is a great opportunity for sell. Hopefully you guys are getting the point. You don't only have to do it at the bottom. You can make some downward looking trend line. So here's one exactly. I didn't put it at the bottom of here, even though I could have. You can create one right here as well. This is one as well. I mean, it's really that simple. It's really that simple. You can see this. So this is kind of like a pathway. It broke this trend line and started heading downwards, right? And then it broke, and then it broke this trend line as well and started heading upwards right here. I actually bought, but the reason why I got out of the buy was because you have to also look at this thing called forexfactory.com, which will release economic statistics. And on days when there are like significant economic statistics being released about a certain currency or a certain country, you want to get out of that trade because you never know what can happen. So for example, look at how it just shot all the way down. This is when the New Zealand dollar released their interest rates around 3 a.m. And it just shot all the way down. I actually made a lot of money off of this. It's called scalping. It's something I'm going to teach in the next couple of videos. But yeah, this still would have been a great opportunity for the buy, but you would have gotten out around here once the New Zealand dollar was going to release their interest rates. So hopefully this makes sense, like making short-term trend lines, especially after you've looked at, and these things correlate. You want to look at the long-term, trend lines, and then, then you zoom in and look at the short-term as well. So like I can even create one right here. See, it touches it a couple times, and because I know that it's bouncing, it's had the pattern of bouncing up and down off of this long-term trend line. I know that once it bounces off, it's probably going to head back down towards that same long-term trend line after it breaks the short-term trend line right here. Hopefully, I'm not confusing you. My point is that it bounces off the long-term trend line, like right here. It bounces off it. It bounces off the long-term trend line again. And then the pattern is that whenever it bounces off of it, it typically comes back down. So it bounced off of it, came back down. Bounced off it, came back down. Bounced off of it, came back down. All right? Bounced off, came back down. So this one bounced off of it. I'm just waiting for it to break this other trend line right here and come back down to it. See what I'm saying? So, this is how you create long-term and short-term trend lines.